This is our original Nikon file, but kind of boring. That was our original Nikon NX Studio. That's our final image in Affinity Photo. This video is a tutorial of NX Studio by Nikon and how to use it together with Affinity Photo. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to edit about majority and as much as possible in Nikon NX Studio. And then if there is any leftover, anything else needs to be done, I'll be doing it in Affinity Photo. So you'll be learning how to use this particular software, which is pretty freaking amazing. And I probably would like to do as much as possible here. And then you'll be also learning how to export it in order to use it in Affinity Photo. So this video is going to be a little bit long because it'll be divided in two different tutorials. Tutorial for this software and the rest of the tutorial will be in Affinity Photo. So without any further ado, let's jump into the video. Now I've got this beautiful photo of the mountain ready. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make it full screen so that I have as much work space as possible. And then let's see if I can make it bigger because the sky can come later. This one is more important. And if you want to know more about the interface, let me explain you very fast and quick. So I'm gonna make it smaller again. On the left hand side, you have the navigation folder where you can go through your files and then edit directly in there. And you have the navigation. At the bottom, you have the thumbnail and you have these little tiny buttons, especially the eye, which is time to time I use. So that shows all the metadatas of the image. I'm gonna close it. And you can either turn on and turn off the histogram. I've got two histogram. I don't need two histogram, so one is enough. And you can rotate the image 90 degree back and forth. And of course, at the bottom, you have, what do you call it? The starring or marking. So you can tag your photos, which is pretty amazing. That's more or less that I stick to. Of course, you have a button to check side by side. You can check up to 4 images, which is, I mean, to be honest, crazy, huh? And convenient at the same time. Can you imagine trying to compare 4 images at the same time? I don't know even Lightroom does it. I don't think so. You have the search or filter button and you have the button that shows the thumbnail. I'm gonna go back to the other one. And of course at the top you have all this navigation, file and browser, which, let's be honest, 90% of us do not use. And quickly about top, you can edit video, you can open in other apps. I heard problem with that particular part because apparently when you finish editing and export it to Photoshop or other apps, Nikon Studio is not able to export that photo with the edit. Normally it's not a problem for me because usually I export 16-bit TIFF manually and then edit in somewhere else. And then you have the slideshow, print, upload and export. Names gives away, you know exactly what they do. And you can do zooming in like fit or one-on-one. You have the button to go back and forth. Usually I use my mouse wheeler to make it bigger or smaller. That I find that more convenient. Anyway, so I hope that little and quick explanation gives you an idea about the interface of Nikon NX Studio. Now let's move on to the actual headquarters of the software. At the top you have the histogram and you can clearly see in the histogram, surprisingly, nothing is clipping. It's perfectly exposed. No blacks are clipping, no whites are clipping. But you have an empty space in the middle. Now I'm gonna start with the adjustment value. What is adjustment value exactly? Now, you know, the original value means that everything is as it was inside the camera. Next to it, you have info. Info is essentially the file information or camera information, all the metadatas. You can also manually add all the metadatas on the side, which is very convenient. Now, starting from the basic edit palettes, I am going to change the picture control. So how do I do that? I'm going to make it bigger and then try to select a profile. My choice, I'm going to click vivid because I like kind of crunchy and contrasty image. of course, as a side effect, it took away quite a bit of detail from the shadow area, but that's fine. We're gonna get back to it later. Now, usually once I'm done with it, I have another thing that I usually do at the very beginning, which is I go all the way to the bottom, or doesn't have to. I just click at the top, the crop button, and essentially I try to get rid of as much sky as possible. So I'm gonna select as much space as possible. The reason why, because here, I mean, the sky to me is not that extraordinary. On the other hand, the mountain is glorious. So that interests me a lot. So I'm going to get rid of as much sky as possible. Maybe give it a little bit room and then click OK. No, I did it wrong. So I'm going to do it again, done. And then I'm going to click proceed. Now we have a beautiful image, almost like a panorama with less sky possible. That's exactly what you want, because the sky is taking almost half of the image. We don't want that. Now I'm going to go back to the basic adjustment, like a color and picture profile and all that. So we already selected vivid. Now the white balance. Now in my previous video, I already explained. White balance is 100% up to you. You can either have a perfect white balance, or you can decide to pick a white balance that works for you. Depends on your artistic view. For instance, here, I think the white balance is just perfect, and I actually do want it warm. Now, what the automatic does, I'm going to check the automatic just for the sake of curiosity. And you can clearly see that not much change, huh? But if you look at the histogram, the blue value a little bit upward. In a perfect white balance, you want to make sure all the RGB value are in the same place or nicely aligned. So I'm going to try to make it as aligned as possible by pulling the slider up, and now looks about right. Now it looks nice and warm, and I like it. It has this, I don't know, kind of mystic, glorious look. Something about this warm and orange look to me. It's again my personal choice. Now here's another thing I'm going to do. In the picture control, I'm going to make it bigger, the vivid section, and I will make sure I'll reduce the sharpening a little bit. I'm gonna make it as bigger as possible. I see the detail, and that is before, and that was after reducing the sharpness. Why I'm reducing the sharpness? The reason why I'm doing it, because you want to do the sharpening and noise reduction at the very end. Otherwise, when you trying to add some contrast, the photo or image might look too sharpened. You don't want a photo with too much sharpening, trust me. Now I'm going to add some brightness. Let's make it bigger, a very touch. That should be fine, and I'm going to make it smaller. Now, here is another trick. Every time you're done with a section, make it smaller so that you have extra space. So at least you know, and you're telling yourself that you're done with the section. You don't need to go back there again, and you have extra room. It's my way to organize myself. Now, active delighting original value off. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to click low and see what it gives me. So active delighting basically trying to reduce highlight and trying to recover shadow, but it also brings up a lot of noise. So very, very, very careful about it. So I'm going to go to normal and see what it gives me, and actually quite like it. The reason why, because not only is recovering some highlight from the sky, so sky looks less white, and you can pay your attention to the mountain, and also bringing some shadow back from the shadow area. I'm going to stick with normal. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to go to extra high too. So you don't want that, definitely. And what about high? No, I wouldn't do that. Maybe normal is fine. Normal is just totally fine, and I'm happy with it. So I'm going to close this one. I'm also going to close the exposure composition, because I mean, it doesn't need any kind of composition in the exposure side. Now adjust brightness and color. Each section you have the original value and a record adjustment. So every time you change, you can actually save it on the side. I made a long video in my previous tutorial. Go and have a look to learn more about it. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to analyze the photo and see, do I really need to go through global brightness and color adjustment at all? Personally, no. As a matter of fact, I need to do a lot of local adjustment, but I don't need to do any more global adjustment. So I can skip all these brightness, contrast, saturation, highlight protection, shadow protection, and delighting H5. I don't need any of those, but name gives away. I'm just going to demonstrate the highlight protection. For example, if I go up, it's essentially recover shadow. As a matter of fact, in fact, I'm just going to do that. And the shadow protection, if I go, is essentially shadow recovery, honestly. And as you can clearly see that in that area, I'm just gonna make it bigger for you to see. You can see that in this area, just something is not right because of the over recovery of the shadow. You sincerely do not want that. So in that case, I'm going to put the slider back and then I'm going to close it, which means I'm done with that too. As you can clearly see now, we have plenty of room and you know officially what you have done already. And it is very, very, very important in photo editing that you know exactly what are you doing, right? I'm going to close this side navigation. I don't need that. Now in level and curves, of course, one of the most classic tool in any kind of photo editing software is levels and curves, specifically curves. And in Lightroom, you also have the black point, middle point, and white point here as well, which is very crazy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set a black point, see what it gives me. There you go. So it's saying that that part is officially the most black of the image, which is of course not, but here you go. This is what it does. And the white point, let's find the widest part of the image. Maybe somewhere on this left corner of the image. Click it. Now you have this nice and contrasty mountain. To be honest with you, do you like it? Because I definitely do. And what if the middle ground? So that's the middle gray. I'm going to click it somewhere. I think it's gray enough and it does nothing. But my point is that you can select your gray point, white point, and the black point, and it should give you a nice and contrasty image. Clearly, this is not really bad looking. Honestly speaking, it's punchy, it's contrasty, it's just glorious. But, you know, I'm never happy with global changes, to be honest. I have my way to work on certain things. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the curves alone except the middle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the middle up a little bit and pull down the shadow back to where it belongs. Pull down the highlight and only bring some mid-tone up, and it looks nicer. It looks quite flat, right? That means that, yeah, there are no contrast anymore. All the contrast are gone. Nothing is clipping. But you must be wondering that what is the point? Like, what is wrong with my life? Why this photo looks super flat? Flat is not wrong because the photo actually looks pretty awesome. How many photos you have seen like that? Now we're going to bring back some contrast with the local contrast, which is the fun part of this software. But before we go, there's another interesting tool that we have, which is lightness, chroma, and hue adjustment. Now, what is that? Essentially, LCH, of course, lightness, chroma, and hue. And you have the chroma selection, hue selection, color lightness, and master lightness. Now, master lightness is essentially a global lightness, a global brightness. So we're not going to go there anyway. We're going to stick with chroma, select our dropper. And what I want to do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Come on, it's taking forever. There you go. And drop it. And this little, I think, looks like a lake. So I'm going to drop it there. Pull this up, not too much. And nothing much going on. So what you want to do, you make sure you make this quite nice and wide. Because if you don't do, like, let's go backward. It doesn't work much. I'm just going to go there. But if you make it wider, it has a really nice fade everywhere. Now let's show you before and after. So that's before and that's after. Now, once you're done with the chroma, I'm going to do another one here in this little thing. So that's rock, which I really like as well. So I want it to be really nice and saturated. So I'm going to bring it up quite a bit as well. Make it nice and wide as well. So let's show you again before and after. Pretty amazing, isn't it? That section looks nice and punchy. We're done with the saturation part. Now we're gonna go to hue. In hue, I'm gonna zoom in quite a bit. Every time you zoom back and forth, this software depends on your computer specs. Can be, it can take a little bit time. Now I'm gonna drop the dropper again on the water, and it did a selection on the LCH, and then I'm gonna pull it. I'm gonna try to change the hue to a bit more light blue and make it nice and wide and see the change. So is there any change? I'm gonna go off on. I'm not a big fan of that, so I'm just gonna go back up and see if there is any change. Now it got more dark, so I'm happy with where I am. So you always have to, play with it, take a look by yourself, and if you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, don't keep it. That's how the game is. Now, color lightness. So I want this part to be a little bit brighter. Not too much though, just a little bit. So I'm gonna put the slider up. It's selected its color zone. Now, what happens if you don't use the white? You see that it's way too sharp. So if you go all the way up, it gives you a really horrible distortion. You don't want that, I'm telling you. So you can go a little bit wider, and it gives you a really nice fade. But of course I went all the way up, so you don't go that far. You just go somewhere in between. And then before, after. Now again, I'm gonna pull it down a little bit and pull down the other one a little bit too. You see, you never overdo it. You never ever overdo it. Minimal and simplicity is all matters. Now, this is phenomenal. I'm gonna show you before and after now, because this is just glorious. I'm a big fan personally. Let's check it out. Before, after. Again, I'm just gonna bring it up. Before, after. Cool, isn't it? Now we start to look good there, guys. In the color booster, I would recommend against it, even though this is also a pretty crazy tool, only because that if you're doing a local adjustment, then do the color booster locally instead of doing globally, unless it's a simple photo. But in this case, I want to do it locally, so I'm just going to skip it. So let's close this one too. Now, before I go to the noise reduction and sharpening and the lens correction and so on, we're going to go to the local adjustment with this U point controller. Now, in fact, we can actually do the lens correction right now. So let's do the lens correction in Nikon Studio. How do I do that? So I'm going to slide all the way down, down, down. The lens correction is already been selected, which is pretty brilliant. I like it already. So I'll leave it as its default. Now, camera corrections. Turn on the moire correction and then go to medium. Stick with medium and low. Don't do too much. Then close. Perspective control. The photo looks, personally, in my opinion, looks nice enough. So I don't need to do straighten. I don't need to do perspective control, and I already did the cropping, so I don't need to do that either. So what's left now? The color control point and the retouch band, which is like getting rid of all the marks and spots. The photo is clean, so I'm going to close this one too. So we're going to finish up with the color control point. Now, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to apply the control point on the image. Make sure it's on the sky. So in order to make sure it's on the sky, I can move it everywhere and make sure it's right on the sky. Right. Now, make it smaller. Make sure that it's concentrated only on the sky. And it can even go upward because you can see that the top sky is not that covered. So make sure it's nice and covered. Brilliant. Now, turn off. And you can reduce the saturation. That's one way to, not the hue, my apologies, the saturation. A second thing you can do is to reduce the brightness a little bit. And make it smaller again. Make sure that you double check. And make it even really, really up. There you go. Now it's nice and beautiful. Now, what you can do, you can right click on the control point and make a duplicate. And make sure you move it around in the right place and make it smaller even. The reason why, because it's getting on the top of the mountain. So I'm going to make it a little bit more small. Now, there's another places that I need to work with, which is that little lake area. So I'm going to drop another control point there, make sure that it's in the right place. There you go, much better. And make it concentrated on that particular area. And make sure it's nice and covered almost every places. I don't mind touching it to the mountain, that's totally fine. And then let's work on it. I'm gonna add some contrast first. And I'm gonna add some brightness and more contrast. I'm going to add a control point on the dark area right there on the left. Make sure it's in the right place. Perfect. Now make sure it's a little bit small, not too big. Turn it off. Now same thing. Add some brightness, add some contrast, and it can go maximum. I love a contrasty photo. Now I'm going to duplicate that control point. First of all, I'm gonna make sure they're showing, and then duplicate and bring it over to the other side. Much better. Now let's turn it off. Now that looks pretty awesome. Now what I can do, since that I have done all of it, I'm going to close all the control points. I'm going to go to the noise reduction, turn on noise reduction, method better quality, zoom in about 100%. But before I go to 100%, I have to get rid of this control point button and then zoom in a little bit, like about 100%, one-on-one, to make sure that I'm looking at the right thing. Add intensity about 15, wait a little bit, see the changes, and hopefully it shouldn't, get rid of all the details. Clearly see that it looks kind of mushy because of the noise reduction. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some sharpness to bring some detail back. And then I'm going to do edge noise reduction. Turn on my sharpness, add just a minor amount of sharpness, not too much. Now, anything else left to do? I'm going to take a look. And look at that. It looks almost nice and beautiful. Now, I'm going to go to the curves, the final touch. This is my final little trick. I'm going to go to the curves and levels, turn on my RGB, maybe add some brightness and add some shadow black for the contrast. Check this one out. How amazing it looks now. And what I could do as well, add some grama and maybe more black, just a little bit. And now, guys, we have made our base. I think I'm done with the editing in Nikon NX Studio. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off the full screen mode, go to the export, change it to TIFF 16-bit, and save it to same folder as original, so that at least I know exactly where it is. And estimated total size is 118 megabyte. Damn, that's big. I'm going to go export. Now export is done. I'm going to close it. Here is our TIFF. So you can see the side by side how much it changed. So I'm gonna take a good look at full screen, and it looks beautiful. And I'm gonna close it, right click, and then open with Affinity Photo. Now typically what I do, I always press Ctrl J and make a duplicate. Now this photo good as it is, and I got my base. So I'm going to do three things here. One, I'm going to play with my levels, see what it gives me. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly that, but I just want to see. So in the levels, I'm going to change the blend mode to luminosity first. The reason behind I want to do in luminosity is because that when I'm trying to change the contrast of the luminosity, it only affect the lights, not the color. And then I'm going to add some black. Let's see how far I can go. And I'm going to add some white. I'm going to put it on the side so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. Let's see how much it's giving me. Wow, nice. Maybe I can push it a little bit more, just a little bit more. And that looks fantastic. So I'm satisfied with the contrast level of this image. What I want to do actually as well, I'm going to go back to the crop and unconstrained, make sure it's completely covered side by side. However, I'm still not satisfied with the sky. I think it's still a little bit too much sky left. So I'm going to crop a little bit more and apply. Now I am satisfied. I can say that I'm satisfied. And if I zoom in a little bit, I think it's missing a touch sharpness, even though it's a clean image. So I'm going to go to the effect and then high pass filter. I'm going to drag and drop on the top. Make sure it's 100% zoomed in somewhere at the bottom, and then slowly go up, up, up. You can start to see the little bit of shapes and edges. Don't go too far though. 1 megapixel to me is just enough. There you go. That looks good. Now I'm going to go to the soft light blend mode. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off and on to show you exactly what it's doing. So that's before and after. So nothing crazy, heavy, and just weird. So it looks like I could push about 2 megapixel of the high pass filter, maybe 2.1. Now I'm going to turn off to see before and after. So before, after, before, after. Right. Anything else to do? I don't think so. So ladies and gentlemen, look at that wonderful and magnificent image. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the file, export JPEG, and I'm going to reduce the pixel to 3000 because I don't need that big. I'm not printing it. And it's a 4 megabyte, 4.3 megabyte of 100% best quality JPEG export. And then I'm going to save it right now, and it's saving it. And then let's open the image. So I've got, this is our original Nikon file. Look at that. It looks, beautiful, but kind of boring. Now, that was our original edit in Nikon NX Studio. And that's our final image in Affinity Photo. Oh man. All right. So this is my long detailed tutorial of how to use Nikon NX Studio and how to do further retouching in Affinity Photo afterward. I hope you like this long video. If so, please do like and subscribe and stay tuned for future tutorials. Look after yourself, super important, and bye-bye.